Good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. We're live from Learn Live TV, and we're going to be talking about using generative AI for prototyping and MVP creation. I'm Lee Stott. I'm a principal cloud advocate within Microsoft. And today with me, I've got an amazing student ambassador, Nima Emmanuel. So Nima, would you like to say hi to our audience?
Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today to talk about AI for creating your embryo prototype.
Nima, so tell me a bit about what is a Microsoft Student Partner, because I bet students have not heard of what student ambassadors are and what they do.
Okay. I think I can describe that in relation to myself. Personally, it has been a program for me that allowed me to grow in my field as an engineer, as well as empower me with tools and resources to help other students who are also like me start their careers and then accelerate their career in tech. It has done that for me, and what Microsoft does is empower students who are student ambassadors to do that for themselves and then for other students.
Excellent. So again, as a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, you get to work with Microsoft people like myself, and you get to meet people like you as the audience and do amazing events and activities. So today, we're going to be working through a Microsoft Learn Live series. We're going to be doing this live. So again, please, if you want to join along, follow the hyperlink that's currently on the page here now, which is aka.ms/learn live -202 40321A. This will take you to a Microsoft Learn module, and we will be using this Microsoft Learn module throughout the session today. So this is part of a wider series of what we're calling the Learn AI Skills Challenge. We have two different aspects to this. We have a live cloud skills challenge, and a cloud skills challenge is about really you gaining that experience and proven demonstration of those experience and skills by undertaking modules on Microsoft Learn Live. We have 4 tracks within this challenge. We have a track aimed at data science, data analytics, data production, so data visualization, which is called the Microsoft Fabric track. We have a track on Azure OpenAI, which is all about Azure OpenAI and generative AI services. We have a track around Azure ML, so Azure Machine Learning, so around the fundamentals of what machine learning is and how to use Azure Machine Learning Studio. And then a track around Azure AI, so the specifics of AI using the Azure platform. So again, if you're interested in learning those skills, there's 4 specific tracks. If you want to do all the tracks, that's amazing. But by doing this, you will get access to a free certification exam by completing the entire Cloud Skills Challenge. So this episode is part of a 9-part series of episodes, which we're calling the Microsoft AI Skills Challenge Learn Live series. This is episode 2. So there was an episode yesterday. So if you want to catch up on that, you can view it on demand. And what we're doing is we're progressively working through generative AI from the very beginnings of consumer use of AI all the way through to building your own AI and using technologies like RAG, so retrieval augmented generation, to add data into an LLM to give it contextual specific outputs based on the user's input. So today we'll be covering lots of exciting experiences. So this is the full agenda of those different series and how they go from the beginnings of where we are today, talk about consumer services, all the way through to creating amazing solutions, such as the final one, which is bringing everything together, building with Azure AI Studio and using Azure AI Search. So if you want to join these series, please check out the link, please pre-register. And again, these will all be live and made all available on demand. And they're all based from Microsoft Learn modules. This is the whole goal of Learn Live, is we want you to take part in this, learn the skills, and we're going to walk through what's involved in those modules, what are the actual outputs and user experiences, and this is going to be live demos, etc. So first of all, let's say hi to our moderator. So we have Merrily, who's our moderator in the chat. So if you've got any specific questions, queries, you want more details, please reach out over the chat. We'll also try and pick up on some of those questions in the session as well and answer them live. Merrill is also an amazing student ambassador. Again, there's a LinkedIn profile if you want to check her out and see what she's been up to. But as I said, being a Learn Student Ambassador is really about creating your first step into Microsoft and working with Microsoft teams and presenting and learning technology skills that really add massive value to your CV or resumes. So as I said, this is a live module. So again, here's the link again. It's aka.ms/learnlive-202-403-21A. You should see the screen as in the screenshot here, which is called a challenge project. So this project is aimed at guiding you through that learning process by giving you a little bit of experience, a short bit of reading around the background, and then actually diving into the Copilot service. So today we're going to be using Copilot with Bing. It was previously called Bing Chat. It's now called Copilot with Bing, but this is basically the generative AI within the Bing consumer search engine. And we're going to be basically building an MVP prototype for a startup company or a project idea. So this could be a student project, it could be a project that you're currently doing at work, or it could be an idea about building a brand new startup. And we're going to guide you through that process of taking an idea all the way through to having something solid at the end, which could be used as a business pitch or a presentation or a scenario that you can present to others. And what's really key about this is we're going to be just building off a prompt. So we're going to be using the chat history within Bing Chat, which is going to be building from each section we put in. So each prompt we put in, we'll get a response. And from that response, we'll ask it another question. So it's going to build this history up of what we're actually doing to then have an amazing solution at the end. Again, in the module, there is a set of prompts provided. But if you have your own ideas, just simply add your own ideas and it will build based on those ideas that you've got. So this is a great opportunity for you to start thinking about, what projects can I work on? So as I said, this is all live and interactive. So hi, Nima, you are live. None of this is pre-recorded. We're going to be doing anything live. Nimhad's going to be doing lots of the demos. Again, this is a great opportunity for him to have that on his resume to be able to say, look, I've done this Learn Live and we've got thousands of people who've watched it. So please say hi. Let us know where you are from in the world. It's always great to see people. We've got people from Germany, people from Switzerland. Namaste is just commented she's from India. We want to make this interactive, so please get involved. Please share with us also. Victor's just coming from Nigeria, so hi, Victor. So please do share with us some of the things that you do produce. We're really interested on how you're using these services and technologies, and how you're actually going to use this within your school, college, university, work life, or even in your social lives. We've seen amazing uses of generative AI, from things like storytelling for children to build me an MVP prototype for my next startup, and I want to raise $10 million of venture capitalism. So please, let's look at what is available. So today we're going to have some key learning objectives. So these are the learning objectives that have been defined within the Microsoft Learn module. So it's going to be developing the following skills. We want you to all, at the end of this, have this skill set. So it's about lateral thinking, about being able to think about, the end-to-end solution. There's going to be lots of visual reading, reading. Oh, everybody hates reading. But, this is a whole area of search engines, generative AI, prompt output. You have to read, you have to interact with it. You can also do images within this as well. So there's going to be some visual outputs as well as both textual outputs. We want you to start thinking about that out-of-box thinking. And again, this is a great concept module to guide you through that whole process of building off prompts and the chat history of prompts. And again, we really want you to think about the problem solving. We're going to be solving problems as we go through this module. And it's going to be artistic, it's going to be creative. And, we can start thinking about it also from an analytical perspective. So asking additional questions to the prompt. So again, this is very open-ended, and it's really designed to get you thinking about how you can do this. We've even got people from Redmond. It's really early in Redmond. Good morning from Redmond, pork chops, because it's seriously early. So let's go over a little bit of an introduction of what this module is about. So this module is called a challenge project, and it's really about building that end-to-end solution. That's the whole idea of what a challenge project has been designed for. And it's really designed to test your skills. There's a few guidelines. So again, there's not much reading in the actual module, and there's no step-by-step instructions. This is about the freedom of you of exploring this. So if you want to change the prompts, please do so. The current prompts that are in the system are based about a company who wants to create a wildlife conservation application And we're going to be using that example because it fits with the module. But if you want to build a new solution, build a new solution. We're just going to give you the framework. The things that you're going to need for this. Okay, so you will need a Microsoft account. You will need access to Copilot with Bing. So Copilot Designer is also built into Copilot for Bing, and Copilot Designer is our GPT-4 vision engine. So that will create visual images and designs. If you want to do this with your, on other services as well, there's things like ChatGPT from OpenAI or ChatGPT from Azure OpenAI services. And the images are going to be created using the DALL-E 2 solution and DALL-E 3 solutions from OpenAI and Azure OpenAI. So all this is available. It's all available for free, so you can actually just trial this. So again, if you want to go through the module, there is links in the module to all these resources as well. So what do you need to be prepared for the challenge? What we recommend is that you do this in a split screen so that you have the challenge window and then your browser window open side by side, so you can read along and copy and paste over. That just makes it much more of an easy experience for you. Again, you're going to have potentially 3 windows. You're going to be watching us. You're going to have your challenge window. You're going to have your module window. If you just want to watch us live now, please just watch us live. This is going to be made available on demand. You can then work through the module in your own time after, but we've built this so you can follow us along. So what do you need to do to go to Copilot with Bing? First of all, you need to go to bing.com/new. That will then open you up in the Bing Copilot experience. So the Copilot with Bing experience, it was previously called Bing Chat. So some of you may have used it when it was called Bing Chat. Now it's called Copilot with Bing because Microsoft is moving all its AI enhanced services to the Copilot brand. So please do look at that. Please make sure you log into that website. And again, if Nihad, do you want to just quickly share your screen so that people know what the screen should look like?
All right. So yeah, you could access it at bing.com/new. Or alternatively, you could use copilot.microsoft.com. Anyone works, but this is the interface that you should be familiar with, or you should see when you get on board.
Perfect. So yeah, you should all see this screen. You should be logged in with your Microsoft account, and then you are ready to go. So if we can go back to the slides. Excellent. So we've got this now set up. What we also want to do is set the conversation style to more creative. So when you go to that page, you should see a set of images, and then it should ask you for the different types of conversations that you want to interact with the LLM. So what we want to interact with Copilot. So if we just go back to Nima's screen, and we can just show you quickly where that is on the screen.
So when you get to Copilot, you want to scroll up, and then naturally you should be at more balance. But given that we want to be creative and explore, you would select more creative. So this sets the conversation tone and asks Bing, Copilot, to be creative with the answers it gives.
And from a technical perspective, Nima, that's called the temperature. So we're changing what is called the temperature of the LLM's response. So more balanced is a more sensible answer. More creative is a weaker answer. So we're just changing the percentage of the response hit rate coming back. So more precise, super accurate. It's not going to make up anything. It's going to be just like really using reference solutions. More creative, it's going to give the LLM that freedom to explore and be more creative. So again, you can have a play with each of these settings. Because we're building a concept and a prototype, we want to be creative in the exercises that we're doing. So if we can go back to the slides. So again, more creative. Again, this really helps to encourage Bing, to think about these things differently. It might create humor, it might create emojis. It's going to do lots of different things in terms of the output that we're going to get. Can I tell if, so we've had a question saying, can I tell if I'm logged into Copilot, but it has my history? So when you log into Copilot, so we'll go back to Neemha's screen just to quickly show you this. On the top right, you should see the logged in profile. So you can see it says Nima at the top there. So when you do go to this screen, it should show you that you are logged in, and that will just be logged in with a Microsoft account. If you're logging in with an organizational account, so you work for an organization who has a Microsoft account, so M365 or AAD, or now what it's called is Microsoft Entra, you might have limited number of calls because that organization might have Copilot from the organization and imposed limits. So you might only have 5 calls instead of the 30 chat history calls. So just be mindful of that. If you log in with a personal account, you will get 30 conversation chats completely for free. So if we go back to the slides. Okay, so what we want to basically do is use the Copilot with Bing to give us ideas of how to actually start to build our prototype organization or website or service. So some of the key areas of functionality that we want to look at is we want to identify the core functionalities of our software. So what software is going to be needed or what solution is going to be needed for our idea. We want to generate some UI designs, so user interface design. So what will the screens of the application look like for our application? We also want to take a visual representation that we may create. So we might create a sketch of our UI designs based on the information that Copilot gives us back. So we might want to create a login screen and we'll design that using pen and paper, or we might use a service like Figma and then give that back to the chat service to then create into a prototype or a mock-up. We also want to really narrow down and be specific with what the product features are. So what do we want our product to have? What are going to be the USPs in our product? And we also want to understand what tools and services can be used in our product. So that could be things like IoT, it could be machine learning, or it could be, a mobile app. We also then want to prompt for some specific features. So we might want to say, this has to be a mobile platform using a specific developer language or tool set. And then we want to say, what are the different components or libraries that we could use in that technology? And then we really want to understand, once we've got our idea, once we've got our application sort of built, how do we deploy it? How do we make it available to our end customers to utilize, to use on the web? As an Azure web app or as a mobile app. And then we also want to ask it what are the next steps? What can we do now? What are the next things we want to do? So we're going to follow this linear approach. So key thing is, so I'm going to pass over to Nihar to talk about, how we're going to build this minimal viable product. So an MVP.
All right. Thank you, Lee. So first, we are looking at building a wildlife solution. And what we want to do is we are at ideation stage, which means we just have the idea currently, and we want to quickly see what it's going to take to start out building out our MVP and then our prototype, and then we can continue from there. So usually what we'd have to do, for example, is take notes down or try to suggest ideas, generate ideas as to how the application is going to function, what are the core features. But what we are going to demonstrate today is how you could use Copilot to have to do all of that. So you can quickly get from just an idea to a prototype in a couple of minutes. So first thing is using Copilot. Next, we are going to go with being creative, given that we are ideating and we are generating ideas. And sorry, Lee, if you could go back to the slide so we can see the first
prompt. The slides and we can talk through the prompts, yeah. So as I said, we're going to create a minimal viable product. We're going to use the chat features in Copilot. We're going to flesh out some ideas. We're then going to get it to build it. So we should have some visual representations. And we should also understand what the deployment and next steps are. So that's our success factors. So these step 4s are what we want to achieve in terms of the solution. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the exercise. So this is available in the module as exercises. And these are literally copy and paste in terms of, you can take this data, just literally copy and paste it in. The first part of this exercise is what we call in the meta prompt or system prompt. So the block, which is in the red box, is basically the instructions we want to give to the LLM about the persona and the way we want it to answer this question. So we're saying, hello, Bing. I have a paragraph summary of my idea that I'm planning to develop into a prototype and then begin building. Can you help me break down the core functionalities of the software solution, be it an app, a website, or a dashboard? I'm looking for a concise list of its main functions in bullet points. So that's a key instruction. You know, you're asking it about apps, websites, dashboards, and you want the response in bullet points. Can you also state what screens would be needed to be developed for this application and what features they will provide to the end user? So we're being very specific in that system prompt. So the system prompt is our instruction. We could also add things like a persona to that system prompt. So we could say, you know, you are an experienced software engineer with 20 years of experience of application development in React technologies, and it would be even more specific. So what the next block is our instruction. So this is our input to that prompt. So this is what we want something to be answered with. So this is our question. So in the blue box, it says human-wildlife conflict is a serious and growing problem that affects both wildlife conservation and human development. Current solutions are often inadequate, expensive, and unsustainable. They also lack real-time data that can enable proactive and preventive actions. Our solution is to use IoT and AI to create a smart system that can monitor, predict, and prevent human-wildlife conflict. So this is like our spec of what we want it to do. We want it to be an IoT system, we want it to be AI, we want it to be smart. It has to predict, monitor, and prevent. The system can collect and analyze data from various devices, such as sensors, cameras, drones, and satellites. The system can use AI to detect, identify, and track wildlife and human activities and threats. The system can also use AI to provide alerts, recommendations, or interventions to relevant stakeholders, such as a wildlife manager, farmers, or rangers. So again, we're being very specific in terms of this is a solution, this is the type of data we want to collect, this is how we want to collect it, these are our stakeholders who will use the solution. So next section is about our solution is unique and competitive. So this is our business value because it uses IoT and AI to provide a comprehensive and adaptive solution that can address the diverse and dynamic challenges of wildlife coexistence. It's also scalable, customizable to different contexts, and our solution has the potential to improve the conservation and welfare of wildlife species, as well as livelihoods and security of people living within wildlife. So we've really given our business proposition there. What do we want this application to achieve? So what we're going to do now is Nihal's going to actually take these prompts, put them into Copilot with Bing, and let's see what we get back. We should hopefully get back a bullet pointed list of outputs and then answer those questions very specifically. So over to Nihal.
Thank you, Lee. So first, as Lee mentioned, really the best we can expect really depends on what kind of prompts we give. So the more information we have in our prompts, the better responses we are going to get from Copilot. So that's the reason why we have, as Lee explained, a system prompt here that really tells Copilot what exactly we want to do, and then goes on to describe the idea that we want to do. So here we see that Copilot is already beginning to suggest first the core functions of what our application is going to be. So first we have data collection, we have data analysis, we have wildlife detection, we have activity tracking, we have threat assessments, an alert system, a recommendation engine, intervention protocols, reporting dashboard, and then customizing options. And then it has gone on to give us what kind of screens are going to be developed. And usually this is what you are going to see as a total for the MVP. So first we have the home screen, which is going to be an overview of what the system is going to be like. Next, we have the data visualization screen, which basically is a graphical representation of data we are going to collect from various sources. Next, we are going to have the conflict map screen, which basically shows real-time data of where we have wildlife and then human activities. We go on to the alert screen, recommendation screen, the settings screen, user profile screen, and then a report generation screen. Now, this is something typically you come to expect in building an MVP or in a typical website solution where you have different screens that details what exactly application is going to do. So already we have this, and this is a starting step as we can see in having to build a solution for human wildlife. Back to you.
Brilliant. So yeah, so as you saw, the LLM has come back and it's actually answered those questions very specifically. So now we have this list of core functionality. We have the list of the screens that we can have developed. So this straight away starts to get our creative thinking. So, what do we need on the home screen? What sort of data visualizations do we need? So we can start thinking about how we use this. So if we go back to the slides and we'll work on to the next exercise. So the next exercise is really thinking about the generation of the UI ideas for the project. So what we're going to use is just this simple prompt. So the prompt is, can you suggest some UI ideas that easily provide the core functionality for users? If the dashboard needs to be multi-page, you can separate the features for respective pages, include links, UI designs with similar examples for more inspiration. So what we're doing here is we're taking that bullet pointed list because we're having this chat history. When we ask this question again, it understands what we previously asked. So it can take the answers, what was previously provided, and build upon those and answer this question based off its previous history. So we'll go back to Nima and he can show us what this looks like.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. So what we are looking to do right now is get visual representation or visual ideas that represent the core functionalities of our platform. And what that means is we have the core functionalities listed out here, but these are just text. So what we are looking for right now is a visual feedback that we want to see for the core functionalities. And we're expecting a visual feedback. However, we are getting text from Copilot. So as I said previously, kind of answer you get or how good an answer you get depends on the prompt. So what we are going to go ahead to do right now is tell Copilot to give us a visual representation. So let's go ahead and say I need a visual of the functionalities. So here we've gone for that to explain better that we are looking to get a visual representation and not just text representation. So let's go back to the former response where we had a home page, we had the data visualization page, suggesting interactive chat, heat maps, alert and recommendation pages, settings. And here we are getting the same thing. So I think we just better need to improve the prompt. So again, I'm going to say
and again, this is a key part that Nima has shown is that, prompting is so key is you've got to ask the question so that the system understands. It's not a human, so you have to be very precise in what you ask it to do. So what Nima is actually wanting it to do is to create a visual image. So at the moment, it's responding back with text. So if you actually ask it to create me a picture representation or a screenshot, a picture that you probably so a virtual image, this will actually help in terms of providing back that response.
Okay, so I'm going to stop asking for this, and let's go ahead and use the same prompts. And this time, let's specify that we want to use Copilot Designer to do that. So remember, if you look at your tab here, we have Copilot, we have Designer, and we know that this is built into it. So Copilot can use Copilot Designer and then get a visual representation. All right. So we cannot create images at this point. Although it's suggesting actually what we are going to need in our homepage. So essentially, back to this, it's already giving us an interactive dashboard. We are looking for a visual representation. And here it's suggesting that on the homepage we have an interactive dashboard with the central page, central hub displaying real-time data, system status. And then come to the data collection analysis page. We have a live data stream, and then analysis tools. And then down to wildlife tracking, we have the wildlife locator and then the trait heat map. And then go on to alert and recommendation type. Essentially, it has given us bulleted points of what we could have within this core functionalities. So we want to go on to design our system or to build, we have an idea. We have a roadmap already of what exactly we are going to be expecting.
Yeah, so Peter just commented, demo fail. So it was a slight demo fail. So hopefully we'll get a bit of recovery in a second. We do have a previous version of this that we can show you as well. So this is one of the issues of interacting with LLMs. You know, these are non-deterministic systems. So you have to be very precise in what your prompts want to be. And your prompt response, so the output from the LLM, is probably guaranteed never to be exactly the same. So it's not like you can stage these and say, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to get this image or I'm going to get this result. This is one of it's one of the benefits, and it's also one of the issues of working with LLM solutions and systems. But again, you know, we'll move on to the next demo, because again, we've got more demos where we'll bring in those visual representations. So if we can go back to the slides. So the next slide is what we want to do now is share a mock-up, because we've got those ideas of the application that we need to build. So it's given us those very specific lists of details that we want to have. We're now going to design some screens. So we've designed some screens on a piece of paper with a pen, so nothing snazzy. You could use technologies like Figma to actually design really nice walkthroughs and UI concepts. But we simply just created this simple A4 page with 4 screens on the page with basic functionality on this page. And what we're going to be doing is giving that image back to the LLM and saying, based on this image and the project idea, can you give me a visual idea how my end product could look like? So if we go back to Nima, and what we call this from a technology perspective is multimodal, because we're actually interacting with the system with different types of mediums now.
All right. So over to this, as Lee just said, we can see here that we can actually make use of images. So what Copilot is going to do right now is first analyze this image. We drew a sketch of what we want the future to look like, and we are talking about the end product. So we are looking at saying the end from the beginning. So right now, I want to get a visual feedback of what my end product is going to look like, and I sketch it on a piece of paper. And what Copilot is going to do is take a look at this image, analyze the sketches we've done, and then based on that information and the prompts we've given it, as well as the chat history we had previously in the chat, it's going to try to create a visual representation of what our end product is going to look like. So already here we see our image is generating, but it has given us links to a couple of places where we can find inspiration. We are popular with, we know what Behance of Neck looks like. So that's one. So these are the screens it has generated, and this basically show a general overview, general feedback of what our end product is going to look like. So some of the screens here show details about each of the features, and this way we can generally see visual feedback of what our product look like at the end of development.
Yeah, and this is really great. You know, so again, this is just quickly giving us back some visual representations mocked up as mobile applications. So we could take these, add them to our presentation slide or to our document. And again, you know, being specific in these prompts, the more you refine these prompts, the better these images will be. But again, it's taking that chat history and building upon it. So that demo worked. Well, hey, as you can see, though, what was really cool about that was that we're in Bing Copilot having a chat. So we're having an NLP, so a natural language chat. And then we asked it to actually invoke an image. So we uploaded an image and it created us an image. So great example of multimodal. So if we go back to the slides. So what we're going to do now is we're going to build on this by actually saying, look, you know, can you now, based on this project, give me a visual idea of what the end product could look like? So now we've got understanding of what our product should be. We've got understanding of like some general screenshots, but now we're going to be very specific and say, look, what we want you to do is design a screen that will be this mobile application screen for the wildlife behavior insight screen. So we're being very specific with the prompt. We're saying, design me a mobile application screen for wildlife behavior insights. What the purpose? Why do we want this? We want AI-driven analytics, and the design elements that we want on that screen are predictive models, heat maps showing conflict hotspots, species behavior, and patterns. So if we go back to Nima, he can show us what this will look like.
All right, thank you, Lee. So now we are going to go ahead and prompt Copilot. Here, we specify that we want to use Copilot Designer once again. And just as Lee explained, in the former prompt just before this, what we wanted to get was a visual representation of what the end product is going to look like. But now in this prompt, what we are looking for is a visual representation of each of these features. So we specify that we want a mobile application screen. So if you're seeing mock-ups of how applications are done, something like that is what we have in mind. And we've given it some core ideas we need: a wildlife behavior insight screen, that's one. Purpose-driven AI analytics, design elements, predictive models, and then species behavior patterns. And what Copilot is going to go ahead to do is generate this. So this is something like what we are
So
looking
this looks
for.
impressive. This looks
Yes.
impressive. Now, this is, now we're at pitch level, aren't we? Could have this in our PowerPoint deck and people go, wow, that looks a cool app. That looks a cool app. So yeah, so this is where, the power of LLMs are really now like, wow, yes, I understand what we've done now. So as you can see, we've built up in this history. This app has been created with pictures of animals. It's got heat spots. It's got trackers. It's got telemetry. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Really like this. So thoughts from
Cool.
people watching this? Is this cool? You're all gone very quiet in the chat. I think we've shocked everyone. So yeah, please do share, if you like this, if you think it's cool. Again, this is being created by DALL-E, which is our image model creation, which is based on OpenAI. But yeah, very, very cool. So think about, previously, if you wanted an app, you'd probably have to find a graphic designer or an app mock-up person or a Figma expert, just from an idea. You just want to pitch this idea. Now you can use generative AI to just do this like within, 30 seconds. Away you go. So a couple of questions. It's really cool how it made those images. Yeah, it's really cool. Nowadays, we have to work with our brains and give heavy lifting, repetitive tasks to it. Well, I don't believe in giving repetitive tasks to AI bots. We should be making our lives easier. And that's the whole concept of Copilot is, how can we become more productive? So this is a great example of, think about how long it would have took you to build a business case. So again, even designers have AI tools, but yeah, 100%. You look at Photoshop now, you look at, mobile phones, all mobile phones have AI in their picture editing software. So AI is now pervasive, it's everywhere, it's how we use it effectively. So if we go back to the slides, let's build upon this. So what we're going to do now is number 5. So we're going to use Copilot with Bing to narrow down our product features. So we've got an understanding of the overall application. We've got a good UI mock-up now. We've got a good visual representation for our pitch decks. And what we want to do is say, hey, Bing, so we're going to be quite polite to the AI and say, from what I've shared so far about my idea, now I want to implement and start building. Can you help me narrow down the main features that my product should have? So we're becoming more technical and starting to ask the AI about, what technical features should I have in my application? So if we go back to Nima.
All right, thank you, Lee. So in this case, we've seen what the visual representation look like for the end product. We've seen the same thing for a mobile application. And as Lee just said, now we want to get to actual building the product. But the first thing we have to do actually is identify what are going to be the main features of my application. So think of this as something like your selling points. If you are going to pitch, you are going to create a PowerPoint presentation, for example. What are the key features that you are going to say differentiates you or make you stand out from other competitors? So here we are editing. I want to come down to the main features we are going to focus on building. Here, now based on the information we've had previously from the chats, from the prompt we gave before, we have real-time monitoring. We have AI-driven analysis. We have an alert system. We have a user dashboard. We have intervention strategies. We have customizable settings. We have reporting tools. We have a user management system, as well as security features, and then scalability. So it goes on to say that these features will form the backbone of our application and ensuring it's comprehensive, user-friendly, and effective. So when we want to get to start building, we know that these are the features we are going to focus on. Real-time monitoring is very important. AI-driven analysis is very important. And so when we want to say build our home page or talk to that people about our product, we can then narrow down what we are building to just its core features, and then we can go ahead to build from there.
Awesome. So some really great questions. So Peter M's asked, would it be nice to be able to integrate into a realistic Power BI screen? Well, Peter, you can. Copilot is in Power BI. So with Microsoft Fabric, you can go into Power BI and say, design me a dashboard based on the following things, and it will build you a dynamic dashboard based on that queries. Again, what's really cool about this as well is you could actually copy and paste what Neem has just showed on his screen here and use Copilot in PowerPoint and say, build me a PowerPoint presentation based around these following things. And it will build you a PowerPoint presentation. You can have a custom theme to that presentation. And straight away, you've got that scaffolding. So going back to a question that was asked earlier in the chat about AI taking over, no, it's not taking over. It's giving you that freedom to actually build and enhance and to refine. So it's not like we never take AI's answer as the real, as the answer. We have to validate that answer, but it provides us that great starting point or that scaffold to move forward. Other key things I just want to point out at this point, as you can see on Neem's screen at the moment, it says 8 out of 30. So Neem's asked 8 chat flows out of the 30 total. So you can only do 30 maximum under the free services, but that allows you to keep building up this same context. Pork Chops has made another great comment saying both devs and businesses can ideate faster. Devs can be faster. And yeah, this is the whole idea of developer Copilot. So GitHub Copilot is about making developers. It's a Copilot. It's not a developer. It's a Copilot. It's about how to make those things that, you don't do very often. So you might be scaffolding projects. Great. But if you've not scaffolded a project, what are the scaffolding frameworks that you should use? If you want to do a specific function call, previously developers used to go to Stack Overflow. Now you can ask Copilot and it will build it. So think about how you make your life easier. That's the key thing. Let's go back to the slides and we'll move on to the next exercise. So the next exercise is number 6. So we want to prompt tools and services for our project. So again, we're being very polite to this AI today. We say, thanks for the help so far. To successfully implement these features, which tools and services will I need to get? Please use a list and respond in short bulleted points and categorize the tools per feature and functionality. So again, now we're getting a bit more technical. What do we need to do to actually build this and what tools and services? So back to Nima to show us what the responses are.
Thank you very much, Lee. So here once again, I really, really like the prompt, and I think I shouldn't fail to mention once again that you should be as concise as possible in your prompt. So here we've actually mentioned that we want to use a list, and then we also mentioned in short bullet points, and then we ask to categorize the tools per feature and then functionality. So what Copilot is going to do is here it has given us for this feature, real-time monitoring, that's given us suggestions as IoT platforms like AWS IoT or Microsoft Azure IoT, hardware such as sensors, cameras, and drones. And then it's gone on to AI-driven analysis, where it talked about machine learning frameworks like TensorFlow or PyTorch or IBM Watson. For then alert system, basically for each of the feature, as we just actually mentioned, per feature or per functionality, it has given us in bulleted points what we can use to develop that. So for the alert system, we have suggestions for notification services as well as email and then SMS gateway. And now down to the dashboard in terms of building the application itself. That's giving us for front-end frameworks suggestions like React or Angular for building interactive UIs. We can also use Power BI, for example, for data visualization. And basically, these features then help us to decide what we can then use. We can go on to say what are the best features we could use for something like this. Or personally, we can go on to make researches and decide which of these platforms or which of these features basically are best for me to build my application. So this has quickly helped us gone from just the idea to seeing the visual representation of the product, to narrowing down to the core functionalities, down to the mobile screen application features. And now we're actually looking at the tools we can use to get started in building the application.
Cool. So I'm going to just ask you, I work for Microsoft. I want this to be Microsoft services. I'm a Microsoft customer. So can we ask it a question to say, what specific Microsoft services and Azure services should you use? So while you're asking that question, I'm just going to cover a question that was in the chat by Ravikant, who said, who's the target audience for Copilot for Bing? So Bing Copilot. So basically, Bing Copilot is our consumer interaction. So this is basically Bing search engine. So anyone who has access to search engines can utilize this service. Copilots from M365 are now built into Microsoft Office, and there's also Copilot built into Windows 11. So depending on the users, they will be given different contexts. So if you're an enterprise customer, you are given enterprise-based data from your Microsoft Graph. So it understands your organization. It understands the data in your organization. It understands the data in your SharePoint. It understands the data in your Word documents. If you are a consumer, it's going to look at the general web, and you can do web and corporate data as well. So think about this service now spanning both enterprise and consumer, and being the way most people, well, this might be the way most people start to interact with devices and systems, rather than just using a standard search where you've got to really think about what you're asking, what you're looking for. You're going to get all these banner ads. This could be a new way of interacting with the data, and also asking further details. Can you summarize this? Can you make it into 150 characters? Could you make me a tweet about this? Can you create me a LinkedIn post about this? Can you create me a blog, or can you create me a document? Can you write this document in the style of? These are all the benefits and powers that, interacting with large language models and small language models, which are a new entity that's coming out, can really help. And then by utilizing a system called RAG, so the retrieval augmented generation, we're joining that public data with private data. So again, you can use that from an enterprise perspective. I much prefer this answer, Nima. This is now very specific. I'm a Microsoft house. It's given me the Microsoft services that I should use. So this is a great example of how being specific in our prompt has changed the context of that prompt to meet me as a user around the services and technologies that I want to use, which is like awesome. Now I can take it to my senior developer and say, look, if I want to do this in Azure, these are the key technologies that I need to use. And you can understand each one by user management, security, scalability. Great demo there. So let's go back to the slides. Let me just check if we've got any questions. So Augustine's done a nice little smiley laughy emoji. So thank you. Yeah, I have to bring this back to Microsoft and bring it back to the technology I want to use. So what we've done now is we're on number 7. So let's just move the slide on. So now we want to prompt specific features. So as you all know, we're building a wildlife AI system. So we want to create a dashboard for users to view and manage the data collected. In addition, suggest which tools, frameworks, and languages we need to successfully build our application, and summarize the response in bullet points. So Nima, if you want to jump to your screen and let's use this prompt, and let's add in that specific about Microsoft technologies.
All right. So here we have the general prompt as Lee have just said. And here we want to suggest which tools, frameworks, and languages we need to successfully build our application.
So let's try this and see what we get. Thought we lost you then. I was a bit worried.
All right. So here, all we want to do right now is we are specifically talking about building the dashboard. And now we want to go into technical implementation. So I saw somebody in the chat ask if it would create code suggestions for this, and the answer is yes. We'll get to that. So just as Lee mentioned, Copilot is owned by Microsoft, and if you use GitHub also, GitHub is owned by Microsoft, and there's GitHub Copilot that allows you to do that. So for example, if you're explaining comment or generating code suggestions, you can easily just use that within your code editor or wherever you're using, and then work with that. Alternatively, you can bring that to Copilot here and then do that. We'll get to actually generating the code we want to use to build the application. But for here, what we can see that for the dashboard creation, it has suggested Microsoft Power BI. It has given us Azure Web Apps to host our web-based application, as well as Azure SQL database. And then for application development, we have it has suggested a couple of languages you could use: C#, JavaScript for the front end, as well as Python for AI and machine learning. We have frameworks, ASP.NET, which is a Microsoft framework specifically, and then React or Angular for the front end UI. And it has gone on to suggest for the app for AI application where we're going to use AI, Azure Machine Learning, Azure Cognitive Services, Azure Functions, and then Azure DevOps or CI and CD. And then for data management and analytics, we have Azure Data Factory, Azure Databricks, Azure Snap Analytics, and coming down to security and compliance, scalability and performance. It has basically suggested microservices services that are valuable where needed, basically, for us to build this application. So what we could do from here, for example, if you're a developer, say you're a developer, what we could now do is in the application development, we could start with JavaScript or find out which specific front-end framework we could use, say React or Angular or Blazor UI, for example, for C++. Or for the backend, for example, we could use ASP.NET and then get a building from there. Additionally, we can then explore Azure services to find out which of these machine learning platforms, actually from Azure machine learning to cognitive services, we can best use to integrate AI into our solution. So here we have much more detailed information as to how we can now get the build in our dashboard. And back to you, Lee.
Awesome. So if we go back to the slide, so now we've got what Azure services we want to do. Again, it's responded in a bullet point list. So somebody asked a question about code. And because this model is trained on all open data sets, so again, this LLM, which we're using is OpenAI. It's been trained on all the GitHub open data sets. So again, we're going to actually ask this now a code question. So we're going to get some code back. So now we're going to move into developer mode. So this is really about the components and libraries. So the suggestion it gave, it said, you can either use Angular or React for our front-facing website. So what we're going to actually ask it to do is, can you guide me on how to create the calendar of emotions on React Native? So this is going back to that example I gave earlier on, is I'm a developer. I've been asked to create this calendar of emotions aspect within a React Native app. I really can't remember how to do it. I'm going to have to go and look at Stack Overflow, or I'm going to go and ask Nima, but he's really busy, so I don't really want to pester him. So I'm going to just prompt it and let's see what it comes back with. So back over to Nima to actually start creating some code.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. So now, if you're a developer, I think this is exciting because this is where we get to get our hands dirty, so to say. So we know, for example, that I think before now, generally, if you had no idea basically how to do this, what you might want to do basically is for the first scroll through Stack Overflow to find a couple of suggestions or people who have worked on a couple of projects similar to this before. But what we could do right now is, as I mentioned, we have probably React Native is a mobile application framework that we could use to get a debut in the application. So here we are asking, can you guide me on how to create a calendar of romantic accounts on React Native? And then what it has gone is, remember that here we did not prompt to ask for the specific code. We asked as a general user. So it has gone to give us very, very good guide on, say you are not a developer, you don't have experience, just as Lee mentioned, starting up by setting up your React Native environment, going on to initialize your React Native projects, the command to use, install your calendar dependencies, and then create a calendar component, emotion login features, and then store your emotion data using state management, for example, display logged emoticons, interaction notification. Basically, this is a guide for somebody who, let's say you have no previous experience being a developer. Basically, when I go through this, I understand to a very large extent what I could make or what I could show to my developers, for example, to get a building. And then if I am somebody who's a developer, I can then go on to prompt further to say, okay, I have set up my React environments, I have applied the React project, and I'm coming down to actually creating a calendar component. So how can I create the calendar component in React Native? Now that's more specific. to you as a developer.
So, Nima,
What's
let's do that. Let's be specific. Let's ask that question.
Okay. So let's go to how can I create the React Native component? Sorry, the calendar component. Yeah.
And yeah.
So what we're asking for right now is for you to be very, very specific. And what we are hoping to get right now is to get the code to create the calendar component in React Native. So let's see. So first, install the React Native package. We have that. Import the calendar component. Okay. So use the calendar component. So here we can see that it has actually given us code suggestions how we can do this. So if you build previously in React Native, or any front-end framework, you would normally have to first install the package you want to use, and then go ahead to import that component in where you want to use that, and then go ahead to create your component. So that's exactly the step that's given us. So first install, next import the component, next use the component, and then you can go on to customize the experience of how you want it fits, and then handle data selection, mark dates, and now we've got a very, very specific set of instructions as to how we can then use that calendar component. So this applies to pretty much every other thing we want to do. If we want to get a building dashboard, for example, let's say we have the UI screen we have, or an image, for example, what we could do is, based on this UI image, for example, based on this UI sketch, generate or create code suggestions for how I could actually create this dashboard in React, in Vue, or in Angular, and then what you do is then. So this is very, very easy to get familiar with. And in a couple of minutes, we've gone from just ideating to actually creating a code you could use to build our solution.
Yeah, Nima. So if you just like add in another prompt, like provide me a code sample for a solution, let's see what it comes back with. Because one's asking a question, you know, like saying, does it like provide box standard code? The answer is no. It will provide you pretty specific code if you're specific in the prompt that you provide it. So, you know, this is where you can start. So again, you know, just to stress, this is a Copilot. You know, what this produces is basically a compilation of what is available publicly on the internet and what it's looking at in terms of the vector search. So, you know, this has to be validated. It's not like, oh God, you know, I'm just going to use Copilot, it's going to build the application. You know, so you do have to validate this, but it's about how you ask that question. The other one is really about the question one asked about, you know, if you give an image, he's asked, will it call out? So he said, will it pull in any special call outs in the picture model you feed in? I think I'm not sure what you mean by that, but let me just sort of replay it back to people, is if you upload an image which has like text within the image, you can ask via a prompt, tell me what this image says, and it will actually read the text in the image using what is called cognitive services. So it's looking at the image and then analyzing the image using OCR and then bringing the image back. So we do have a specific version of that. I have a specific service, called ChatGPT-4 with vision, which is our multimodal vision. So you could upload an image of someone wearing some clothing and say, tell me what clothes are in this image, and it will say, you know, male, white, wearing, you know, white jeans, Adidas trainers, Adidas jacket. So it does understand to that level, which is really impressive. Or it might say, blue car driving on a tarmac road, etc. So honestly, these services are really, really impressive. So again, if you scroll, this gave us a really good code sample. So again, you know, we've got a pretty much, you know, a library here for how to get started in terms of that component.
Yes. So here we specified that we want to build, provide me a code sample in React for building the solution user dashboard. So we want to build a dashboard, and we're specifying that we want to use React to do that. So what that's gone on to do is actually give us an example. They include a navigation bar, a welcome message, and then placeholders for different sections of the dashboard. So here we have navigation bar at the top here. Next, we have the header, which says welcome to your dashboard. And then from there, we have the main section that then gives us placeholder that we could use for, say, the chat components, the profile components, as well as the user settings components. So basically, this is a structural outline for what our dashboard should look like in React. So if you're familiar with React, for example, you could take this, validate it, for example, and then go up to improve it by adding the component that you want to use and then build from there. So this is a very, very good example of how you could actually specify, how you could actually narrow down your prompt to get exactly what you want. So it has gone on to say you would actually need to create and import the actual components you would need and then enhance the dashboard as you want. But then if you want also, I don't think we can do that for the purpose of the time on the meeting. You can specifically go on to actually mention the kind of styling you want to use, the library you want to use, for example, or the kind of components you want to create, and then be very specific with that, and then you should get your answer.
And again, what's really great about these responses is it's providing a set of references that the LLM has indexed. So again, you've got a link to a GitHub sample, you've got a link to Mu, which is a collection of free React dashboards. We've got code and sandbox.io again, which is lots of collections. You've got Telerik, which are control features for an application. You've got a Wikipedia link. So again, as a developer, you should be like, right, I'm going to validate these resources. I'm going to check this content. If you're using content from a GitHub repo on your enterprise application, are you allowed to do that under your coding standards? So there's lots of things that you still need to take into perspective. Norman's asked a great question in the chat about, for more technical answers, do I just specify code only? Yes, you specify the most you can. So it's like, I want this in C# at this version using Visual Studio Code or using this extension or using this plugin. And it will be as, it'll be as precise in terms of that response based off, it's a good old garbage in, garbage out, being more precise in your response in and having that contextual history of what you're trying to do, the answer will become much better and better as we go on. So if we go back to the slides. So we've now got our React Native. So we've got our mockup, we've got some code designs, we've got some basic code to actually start building. What we want to do now is think about building that website. So we want to build a website now for the company, and we want to understand again, how can we deploy websites? And we're being very specific in this prompt. So we're using that Microsoft services or free tools to avail this to my users. So we're basically asking Copilot chat, how do I build and deploy a website, and how do I make that available for free, ideally, to my end users? So back to Nima to see what this prompt comes back with.
Thank you very much, Lee. So here, we are getting to deployment. So let's assume that we are actually going to pass the stage of building. And now we want to actually deploy our website to make it available for people to use. And what we've actually asked for is first using Microsoft services, specific, and then using our free tool that we could use to make this happen. And what it's going to do basically is suggest the kind of application we could use. So already we have Azure App Service, which is very, very popular to use and to create and deploy your web apps. We have Azure Portal, which basically gives you access to all of Azure services to use. We have Azure DevOps, Azure Container Registry if you're going to be building with images and containers. And then for free tools, we have GitHub Pages, we have Netlify, we have Heroku. And these are really, really good services I may develop for myself. And these are services that we could use. In addition, for example, I think you did not add that. You have Microsoft Power Platform, for example, for you to do that, where you use Microsoft Power Pages to quickly build, prototype, and then deploy your application. So basically, these are examples that we could use. Let's say we are done with development and now we want to post our application somewhere just to test it out, for example, just to get feedback from people. GitHub Pages is really popular for people to use. If you're building a front-end framework, it's just front-end entirely. We have Netlify. And then if you are posting whether a back-end or a front-end service, we have Heroku to do that. So these are examples that we could really use to then post our applications. Back to you.
Yeah, so again, what's really great is it's given us some real good references there in terms of the content. There's a great question by AP saying, did you experience similar laziness symptoms when using Bing Chat for coding compared to GPT-4? Not sure what you mean by laziness symptoms. I think, what we're saying is this is a Copilot. If I was actually just a pure developer, I would be using GitHub Copilot because I'll be in Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio. I would then be prompting in my IDE, so within the IDE itself, how to do a specific function or a class, etc. And what's key about doing that within the IDE is that the context awareness is there. So it understands the solution that I have open. It understands the file structure and the hierarchy within that solution. It can reference any of the open files. So does it understand variable names? Yes, it does, because it can see what is in my code base. So by prompting in GitHub Copilot, the output is going to be so much more better because it has that contextual awareness. Whereas trying to do that in GPT-4 chat or trying to do it in Copilot with Bing, it doesn't understand the context of my user base, of my code base. It doesn't understand my coding style. It doesn't understand the libraries. It doesn't understand the variables. So if I was a developer, AP, make sure you do it within Copilot. In terms of laziness, this is about making you more effective. It's not going to replace you as a developer. There's no way this is replacing developers. This is making you more effective. It's making you just faster at those tasks that you weren't sure how to do or not sure how to do, or the validation of a task, or, it could be like refactor my code base, or it could be simple things like, oh God, I've got to create the documentation for my code. There's a great feature which is called slash commands in VS Code. So you can do a slash explain, highlight all your code, slash explain, and it will actually build you comments within your code based off the code base which is there. So there's features like that which just make life so much easier. I'm not going to say it makes you lazy, because it makes you more productive. It's not like I can go, oh, I've done now, I'm going to sit here, I've finished. Because someone's going, what are you doing? It just makes you more effective. So you actually end up probably doing more, but you'd be doing more effective. So again, you would love to hear your experiences if you've used things like GitHub Copilot, etc. So what we've got now is we've now built up our solution. So this is like our pitch deck now. So what we've got here is, we understand what the application is going to do. We understand like our statement, our vision statement of our organization. We now really want to create a brand and logo to this. So, we want to make our slides look really pretty. We want to add that design and visualization and theme to our slides. So what we're going to do now is give Bing Copilot just some information about, this is what we've now solidified on in terms of our application. We might want to use this as a social media post, or we want to use this within a slide. So Nima is going to take this prompt and then see what visual designs it can create for us for our brand and logo.
All right, thank you. So just quickly before we get to that, remember when we asked the prompt to suggest UI ideas, for what the function was going to look like. I want to share a previous demo we did, and these were a couple of suggestions we got from what the end product was going to look like. So it just goes on to say, as Lee was explaining, that really it doesn't make us lazy per se, it's just to help. So what really has to basically is if it doesn't give us the feedback actually we need to get immediately, for example, we could have, for example, try to use Copilot Designer, which is more direct, then give the prompt and then try to get the answers, or prompt it naturally better till we get the response we are looking for. So now, again, we are going to try to use Copilot Copilot Designer, because that's what we are going to use to create the brand logo. What we're asking to do is to create a brand system and then logo for the solution. Now we've outlined what the solution looks like. So naturally, if you were to give this to, say, a graphic designer or somebody who designs logo, you would want to give them context as to what you are trying to solve, and what you are doing, and then you could use that information to then try to suggest or then create logos. So we did similar here. We gave information as to we are solving wildlife conflict with IoT and AI. We provide information as to what exactly this is, how it works, and then why we stand out. And boom, we have this. So we have a couple of suggestions from Copilot as to what our designs could be. This represents an animal, for example. We're talking about wildlife here. as well as this. This kind of looks good. But then we can take this, for example, open it in the Lateral and then further refine it till we get what kind of logo. Additionally, we could have been more specific. Let's say we want to create an abstract logo, for example, we could have specified that here and then gotten better responses. But yeah, in general, this shows that we can actually just start from beginning to the end to quickly take an idea, refine it, and then go from just an idea stage to now having what our product is going to look like. We can even generate the code we need to build the platform. We are aware of where we could deploy the platform to. Now we have what our logo could so potentially look like. We can go on to refine that. And essentially, we're going from just idea to where we can actually start development just in a matter of minutes. So back to you, Lee.
Awesome. Yes, if we go back to the slides, and what we did, we were playing earlier on. So this is one of the designs that we got when we were messing with the prompt. So again, we now have a solution with a great visual representation of a mobile app with all that connectivity with images of wildlife in the background. So again, this is about, not just taking the first answer. If you don't like it, refactor, rechange your prompt, be more specific, provide more detail, and then you will get some amazing results. Again, once you have this, we now have our solution, we now have our pitch deck, we now have our ideas of what we need to do. We've got the understanding of how we want the application to develop. We've now pretty much created our entire MVP, and we've done that less, it's been just over an hour in terms of doing this. So again, think about, if you spend more time on this, you can keep refining, building upon it, iterating, getting that creative thinking really working. So, really straightforward. This has been a great challenge to work through. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to have a knowledge check and see, hopefully, how many of you are actually listening to us during this session and following along. So we've got a couple of questions. There is a poll that we'd like you to complete. And we're going to basically read the questions. We want you to vote on the poll. So the poll is there now live. And then please do respond with some questions. And we're going to, so the first question is Copilot with Bing for personal use free? So is it A, yes, B, no, or C, maybe? Oh, Kevin's here as well. Hi, Kevin.
Okay, we have pretty good votes.
Awesome. So the answer is A. So well done to everybody who said A. Yes, so Copilot for Bing for personal use is free. As I explained before, if you do have an organization M365 license, you do get Copilot for Bing and Copilot for Windows and Copilot in Office, but there is a license use for that. And again, that is sometimes locked to your corporate data only and not public data. Next question, how many answers can I get from Copilot for Bing as a free user? I've said this lots of times today. So if you signed in, you can get up to 30 chat turns per session and 300 chat turns per day. Or is it B, unlimited? So what do people think? Is it A or B? People have been listening. Woo!
That's pretty great,
The correct
actually.
answer is A. So well done to everybody who's listening. Yes, you get up to 30 chat turns. So that's 30 prompts that will remember the history from the previous prompt, and you will be able to build up in terms of the questions or the interactions that you're asking. The next question, what factors influence the quality of output from Copilot with Bing? Is it A, the time of day you ask the question? Is it B, the speed of your internet connection? Or is it C, how well crafted are your prompts? So hopefully you've been listening to us today about, how to do this properly.
Yeah, we've repeated that a lot of times. So I guess
there's a few people getting it right. Hey.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the answer is C. So it is how well you craft your prompt. So again, If you don't get the response you feel is correct, refine, iterate, recreate that prompt, try again. You will get improvements. And again, you will get better at asking this prompt. This is a whole new job now. There's a new job called prompt engineering, which is about how to design prompts. Because, if you look at automated assistants or what were previously bots, this is how they're now being built. They're being designed with prompts and prompts being made available to then look at the specific knowledge entities to then retrieve the right information. So prompting is a new skill. So we're coming to the end of the modules today. So, the summary. So hopefully the things that you've learned, you've developed the following skills and thought about these skills. So lateral thinking, visual reading, out of the box thinking, problem solving, artistic creativity, and hopefully create an analytical mind. So just because you do get that answer, you have to validate it. I think this is our key stressing point is, you have to validate it. You have to ensure that you feel comfortable with it. Are the sources valid? Does it make sense in the context you're asking it? If not, change your prompt, ask a new question. So, keep thinking about this. And again, this really gives you that opportunity of building something very, very quickly and also very, very interactively. So the next steps, if you're a Microsoft startup, so Nima is actually a Microsoft startup. You're a member of Founders Hub, aren't you, Nima? You can join Microsoft Founders Hub. If you're a student, we'd love you to participate in what we call the Imagine Cup, which is Microsoft's premier developer competition. Again, we hope that you've created or going to create some prototypes and build some minimal viable products or MVP. So MVP, minimal viable product, not most valuable player. Microsoft does have a thing called MVP, which is most valuable professional, but this is, building that idea. So Nima, just give us a bit of background about what is Founders Hub. How has it helped you?
I would say very incredible. Once again, similar to the Saint Ambassadors program, Founders Hub especially empowers you to build with resources and access to tools and resources by Microsoft and partners. So it basically helps take your idea to validation, or from validation to your product, or take your product, for example, and then scale to the market. So at any point you are in your founder's journey, whether it's just an idea or an MVP or a solution that already exists, Founders Hub give you access to tools, resources you could use to take your products or your idea from one stage to the next stage. So it's really great. I almost exclusively, since I started using Founders Hub, I've not had to pay a dime to do something else. So everything we build on Azure services, using LinkedIn profiles, for example, LinkedIn ads, for example, all of that come as benefit, as well as actually open AI credits if you want to build with the help of GPT or Azure AI open services. All of that you have access to in Founders Hub. So it's a really, really good service actually to use if you're a founder. Just apply with a LinkedIn profile and then that's all, and then get started building.
Awesome. So please do check out Microsoft Founders Hub. So again, if you're interested in doing this module, here's the final link to the module. You can click on the QR code or type in the URL. Please do this module. It's an amazing experience. Again, just change those prompts, think of those ideas. This is a scaffolding challenge project. So yeah, we're just giving you the framework to build on and create those solutions. So next thing is, don't miss out on the rest of this series. This is part 2 of a 9-part series. The next episode is on March the 28th. This is now going to get a little bit progressive harder. So it's about using generative AI to create your models for a startup. Please do the Microsoft Learn Skills Challenge. There's a QR code there. And please register for the next episode. Again, all these episodes will be available online and available. So please do check them out. You can go back and view them at any time. The final call to action for you as viewers of this is, we do have a Microsoft AI community Discord channel. So if you're into Discord, we have a channel with thousands of people in there sharing their experiences. There's experts, there's MVPs, who are the Microsoft most valuable professionals, not a minimal viable product. They're there to help you and really support you in terms of building your AI solutions. We also have spaces. We have roundtable discussions. So if you're interested in AI, please do join the Discord community, and we hope to see you in that community. So from me, it's been a huge thank you. Thanks for all the questions that have been in chat. It's been great to see questions from a few people in the chat, and it's always great to have that interaction. A huge thank you to Nima. You know, Nima, awesome job, great demos, and over to you to say goodbye to everyone.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining. And essentially, all of this basically just let us know that we could really just take the advantage of AI to quickly build and then interact with our services. But essentially, we are talking about taking an idea that you have, validating that idea, basically going on to build with that idea, and then with the help of founders, or for example, take that idea with the tools and resources you need, and then get it out there in the market. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you. We're both on LinkedIn, so if you've got any further questions, I'd put them in the AI Discord channel, reach out to us, but we're more than happy to help. So thank you for all joining us. And again, if you're viewing this on demand live or on demand later today, you know, welcome to the AI Skills Challenge and the AI series.